Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from I Try Running Programs, and this is the third week of the Hal Higdon Advanced One Marathon Training Program. So overall, kind of an interesting week in that it's a little bit heavier in more speed workouts for the week comparative to distance. In fact, this is probably the shortest week in total mileage that I've run for this program and potentially even for the year. But it was probably a slightly more difficult week just because of the amount of paces that would go above race pace, in theory at least, or at race pace. So with that in mind, the first three runs of the week, as always, pretty simple: a 3 mile run, a 6 mile run, and a 3 mile run, all done at easy pace. But the last three workouts are kind of interesting in that there's some shorter work at the 800-meter distance, doing interval training, and then a 6 mile race pace run, and then a shorter long run in which I was going to try Hal's recommended 3-1 split for that, where you run 75% of that run, nice and easy, just a normal long run pace. And then the last 2 miles of that would have been something kind of more around slightly slower than race pace, but slightly faster than what you were running. However, that day I wasn't feeling particularly well from a nausea standpoint, so I ended up just running a long run. But the two workouts themselves did go pretty well. Now, in terms of the overall week, and this can give maybe a little bit of a spoiler to how the week went, you can see that the actual more pace type workouts went relatively well for what I was trying to do. The week in and of itself, pretty simple at about 30 miles covered. Took me about 4 hours of training in total, and ran it relatively flat. Where I live here in Salinas, California, most of the running is pretty flat. You're gonna be pretty hard pressed to find some hills. So I do try to run in kind of a more hilly section to the best of my ability, but even those are quite easy in terms of the course elevation profile. So in terms of the first run of the week, was a very easy run, nothing really crazy to report here. Ran 3 miles, a little bit above 8-minute pace. Nice and easy. You can see the beats per minute nice and low. Nothing really crazy to report here. Was just getting in the easy mileage as recommended from Hal. And then similarly, the second run, this is where it's just more of a time on feet run. So 6 miles, also done up near about 8 minutes in pace. You can see once again, my beats per minute stayed relatively low, a little bit higher at points because for some reason, I got a little bit quick in around the second mile, kind of getting above the 7-minute per mile pace, or below the 7-minute mile pace, I should say. That's not all that rare because this particular course that I run, I'm running up near kind of a golf course here. And so you go kind of down and you come up again and you go back down. And so it's not totally crazy for the paces to not stay flat during those runs. But overall, once again, a pretty simple run, nice and easy. I think at first my plan was I was going to turn this into my pace effort because I believe my wife was off of work that day, if I'm remembering correctly. However, I just realized I don't really want to mess with Hal's plan. I had just done a long run that weekend. I'm just going to kind of ease in. So I think after about mile 2, I just decided let's just stay the course, make it an easy run. Don't kind of mess up the strategy that Hal has set into place, right? Then the third run of the week, also once again very easy. I won't really waste much of your time here. 3 miles, all done right up around 8-minute pace again. And then once again, beats per minute were very, very low. So that was fantastic. I don't know what this spike in pacing is here. I think my watch just got a little bit crazy. But the thing that I really liked about this week from the easy run perspective is that I actually tried to keep them easy. Even in that second run of the week where I almost decided, hey, let's make this more like a race pace type workout, I just told myself mentally, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I'm supposed to be running nice and easy, nice and comfortable. That's what's important for today. And that's something that it's kind of becoming my mantra, is make the easy days easy and make the hard days hard. And if I can continue to do that, then I don't feel much stress on my legs, both from kind of an injury perspective, but also more importantly, a muscle fatigue standpoint. And then also the motivation behind running stays consistent. You know what your goal is for the day. And so if you go out with that mantra of, I'm going to run this easy because that's what I'm supposed to be doing, it becomes much easier just to achieve that goal. And I think similarly, that's why these workouts went so well this week. And the first major workout was a 800 repeat. And the way that Hal recommends interval training is pretty simple. I think most running coaches would recommend it this way, where you do the repeats obviously hard, but then from there, you can make your rest between the repeats as easy as you want to be. In fact, you can walk between reps if you want to. And that's what I personally decided to do because I have not done a track workout going on maybe 3-ish years. It's been a very, very long time since I've done a true track workout. Now, I didn't run this on a track, but this is more obviously a track interval style type of training effort. So I measured out an 800-meter distance in around my neighborhood that was flat so that I wouldn't have to worry too much about elevation changes impacting the pacing. So what I do is I basically jogged out to a straight street where I could run on. There's a little bit of movement in the pathway that I was running on, but by and large, a relatively straight run. And I just ran hard one direction and walked back the opposite direction for my overall repeats. And that's why the pace looks so slow because I just kept the pace running. But if you go down and you look at the repeats, you can see that's where I, obviously picked up pace quite significantly through that run. So this was 4 800-meter repeats, or basically 4 half-mile repeats is how I ran it, and then walked in between. And so I ended up running the repeats right around the low 3s. And then in my last repeat, I ran it in about the high, about 240, 245-ish range, which was exciting. I actually didn't finish the last repeat, not because I didn't have the ability to, but it was starting to get a little bit later in the morning, so people started walking. And so as I was turning the corner for the final probably 60, 70 meters of my repeat, a stroller was right in front of me. So I had to kind of dodge or jump into the street. And I just stopped my watch and decided, okay, that's kind of good enough for me. I'll take that as a good enough full on repeat. So the good thing about these repeats is that I hit them probably right around or even a little bit faster than what Hal would recommend for your overall repeat. What he essentially recommends is to take the time that you wish to run in the marathon and then run the repeats as consistently in a minutes and seconds perspective comparative to that marathon. So if you were going to run a 3-hour, 5-minute marathon, you'd run a 3-minute, 5-second interval repeat for whatever distance you're covering for said intervals. Okay. So in my case, since I'm trying to eye about a 3-hour marathon, I would want to run about a 3-minute flat half-mile repeat every time I'm doing this exercise. So the final repeat was above pace, which is fantastic. It does show some top end speed once again. The only downside I would say to this is that the reality is this type of workout is going to be somewhat time intensive if I'm truly walking between repeats. So the next time I have to do more of this type of track style effort, especially if I can actually do it on a track, then I will do the repeats hard and then try to do a light jog in between so that A, it's a little bit faster, and B, there's slightly more training stimulus. I'm not a big fan of the run walking methodology. In this case, it makes sense because you're doing a very specific training type. But by and large, it takes more time than is probably really worthwhile. The other small addendum here I would add is that I learned how important water is on these types of repeats. I had left a water bottle at home. I was going to just toss it and leave it on a bench in the park that you pass through on this repeat. And I really wish I would have had it because by the third repeat, I was kind of sucking wind for water. I really, really, really wanted something to drink. I kind of felt like that Breaking 3 marathon documentary back in the day where they kind of realized like, hey, you could actually run a lot faster if you drank water during the half marathon. The runner's name is slipping my mind right now, but essentially that gentleman would be a lot faster if he would have drank water. He would never drink water during his races. And that's kind of how I felt during these repeats. I'm not trying to compare myself to a professional runner by any stretch of the imagination, but I think having some water there would have been nice. Now, the cool thing is in that final repeat, they gave me a best estimated effort with my 400-meter time at $1:15 or 1 minute and 15 seconds. That obviously, much like most of my shorter distances, anything 10K down to the 400-meter, I would say are very soft times. Once again, I do not train for shorter distances. I primarily run the half marathon and the full marathon when I run races. So I'm not really someone who's ever worked on my top end speed. And I found that these are really fun days when it comes to your running, when you're not used to these types of efforts. But in a lot of ways, I still have to learn how to run these effectively. So I'm getting the best training stimulus out of it. And I think by and large, because they're so unique and so fun, it's hard not to try to run them as hard as you can, because you never really get an opportunity to run quite like this if you're constantly training as a distance runner, at least in the ways that I used to train in the past. Now, when we move over to the second major workout of the week, this was a 6-mile goal pace run. So once again, this is something where I would probably want to be down around as close to 7 minutes flat as I can be. Now, this is another time where I took that run up near the golf course here in Salinas. So you get to kind of go a little bit downhill, you get to go a little bit uphill. Not a ton of elevation change, but enough that you can feel it in those moments. That's definitely true. You would find if you were running this course, I think you would share that opinion. Now, for me, I was able to keep this relatively flat. You can see besides the final quarter mile, everything was in the 7:09 in the third mile, excuse me. This is where you go uphill a bit. And this is why that dropped, from a pace perspective. It was able to keep everything in that 7:09 or faster pace for 5 out of 6.25 miles. So that was really something I was very happy about, because I was not looking at my watch during this. I was just focusing on the run itself. And you can see that I kept the paces relatively in that kind of 6:40-ish to about 7:30-ish to 8-minute pace. This 8-minute pace is when you're running right up a hill. So this makes sense why it dipped, but I kicked right back up into the high 6s from there. So that was fantastic. I was able to keep that going. And honestly, it didn't feel that hard. That's what was so exciting about this run. When I looked down at my watch, I had actually gone past the 6 miles, because I didn't realize I'd even run 6 miles at that point. I was feeling great. I could have kept going for another 3, 4, 5 miles and wouldn't have been winded. So I was really, really happy with this effort overall. Once again, Strava estimates that this is my best 10K time at about 44 minutes and 30 seconds. As I said before, very soft 10K time. I think this will get broken multiple times during this overall training program. And really wouldn't be shocked if this ends up getting down even below 40 minutes by the time I, kind of toe the line for the marathon, because this felt relatively easy by and large. The great thing too is you can see that my heart rate was much lower than a lot of my runs in the previous weeks. In the previous weeks, I was averaging more like mid to high 160s. I've been able to keep my heart rate down quite a bit over these last few runs. So I'm really, really excited to see that I'm either A, getting more kind of used to the stimulants that I'm taking, or B, and more importantly, the training stimulus is kicking in and I'm getting used to harder efforts. And I think that's probably more what's happening than the kind of previous statement that I made. Now, lastly was the long run for the week, a relatively short run in terms of the long run perspective, at only being about 8 miles. I did it at about an 8:30 pace. And I will be honest, this was actually kind of a slog. I did not feel good this entire run. I just was having stomach issues, had to actually stop somewhere to use the bathroom. It was that bad. Relatively rare for me. I'm not a big stomach issue guy when running unless I've just eaten. So this was kind of a weird one for me. I wanted this to end the week strong and actually do that 3-1 style, as I had mentioned earlier in the video, where Hal would recommend that you run that last quarter of your long run at a better pace. And I guess theoretically, I somewhat did that. If you look, there was even 1 mile where I fell into the 9s because I just did not feel good. And I actually did have to stop, not only to use the bathroom, but to walk and just get some water in me. I was feeling that poor at a couple of different places in the run. So I'm so glad that I covered the distance. It was only disappointing in the sense that I wasn't able to complete more of the workout style that Hal says that, and these are optional, by the way. If you go back and you read the training program, Hal doesn't say that you have to do 3-1 long runs, but it's a way to get a little bit extra stimulus on your shorter long run days so that you can still get a little bit more return on that investment of your time and the mileage under your feet. So overall, not a horrible run by any stretch of the imagination, but could certainly be improved. And lastly, I will close. I know sometimes I talk about this at the beginning of my videos, but I will close with kind of where my weight went for the week. I'm now down to 185 pounds using the Navy body fat percentage calculator, still at 10% according to that calculator. I still think that's a little low. I still think I'm in somewhere around the 13% body fat range. Once again, looking leaner kind of every day in the mirror as you kind of, track it weekly. But by and large, I think that's also helping a lot with the speedier exercises. As I'm dropping that body fat, I just feel leaner, the efforts feel easier. So it's just, once again, just goes to show that getting rid of any excess weight can have a huge, huge impact on your performance positively. And so I'm personally just going to continue to do that as much as I can so that I can get the most out of the training that I'm trying to do. Because that way it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. The training is going well. If I can have my body in as peak of performance physically as it can be by that time that I'm towing the line for the marathon, then theoretically I should have the best chance to run a marathon that I think I'm capable of running on that particular day. So overall, we'll continue to see how the program goes going into week 4. If you have any questions about the Hal Higdon program, let me know, and take care.